I clawed my way out of a rusted ventilation shaft, expecting to see a nuclear wasteland, gray skies, and maybe, if I was lucky, the charred remains of a forest. I held my breath, waiting for the radiation to burn my skin off, just like Dad promised it would. Instead, I saw a teenager in an oversized Gap hoodie drinking a venti iced latte while scrolling on an iPhone 15. The sky was a perfect, insulting shade of blue. A Toyota Camry drove past me, with the radio blasting Taylor Swift. That was the moment my knees hit the asphalt, and I realized the apocalypse didn't happen. My father had stolen 12 years of my life for a lie. Tell me honestly, if you found out your entire reality was a sick game invented by your own parents, would you go to the police, or would you go back down there and kill them yourself? Let's go back to the night the world ended. It was November 14th, 2012. I was 8 years old. I remember the time exactly, 11:42 p.m., because I was staring at the digital clock on the dashboard of my dad's silver BMW X5. We were speeding down a dirt road, the suspension screaming every time we hit a pothole. My mom was in the passenger seat, sobbing into a silk handkerchief, clutching her jewelry box like it was oxygen. My older brother, Leo, was 10. He was playing with a Game Boy, completely unbothered. I was the only one screaming, "Dad, where are we going? I left my teddy bear." Dad didn't even look at me. His eyes were glued to the road, his knuckles white on the leather steering wheel. "Sarah, shut up. The bear is gone. Everything is gone. The bombs are already in the air. If we don't get to the sanctuary in 5 minutes, we turn to ash. Do you want to turn to ash, Sarah?" That was the first time he used that voice. The voice of God. Cold, absolute, terrifying. We pulled up to an old barn in the middle of nowhere. Dad ushered us inside, pushed aside a pile of hay, and opened a heavy steel hatch in the floor. He shoved me down the ladder so hard I scraped my shin. As he sealed the wheel lock above us with a deafening clang, he looked down at us with tears in his eyes. "I saved you," he whispered. "The world is burning, but I saved you." I didn't know then that he was checking his Rolex Submariner to make sure he hadn't missed his window to disappear before the FBI raided his office. The bunker smelled like recycled fear and canned beans. 2,000 square feet of concrete that Dad called salvation. I called a coffin with a generator. My mother withered away. She spent the first 2 years sleeping, popping pills from a stash Dad kept in his safe. She was a ghost in a silk robe. Tell me, what's worse? A father who controls you, or a mother who watches him do it and says nothing? But Dad? He thrived. He was the king of the underworld. Every morning at 0700 sharp, we gathered for the briefing. Dad would stand in front of a whiteboard map of the USA and draw red circles. "The radiation zones are expanding," he'd say, tapping the marker against the board. "New York is glass. Los Angeles is a crater. The mutants, the skin melters, have been spotted near the sector above us. We have to be quiet today. Extremely quiet." Imagine walking on eggshells for a decade, believing that if you dropped a spoon, a zombie would hear you through 20 feet of concrete and eat your family. Here is where the cracks started to show. Leo, my brother, was the prince. Even underground, the hierarchy remained. When the canned peaches started running low in 2018, Dad made a new rule. Men need more calories to protect the women. Leo got double rations. I got watery beans. One night, I caught Leo eating a Snickers bar, fresh, the wrapper still crinkled. We hadn't had chocolate in 5 years. But here's what broke me. The expiration date said 2019. Dad had been going outside. He had been bringing back supplies, just not for me. "Where did you get that?" I hissed, my stomach cramping with hunger. Leo just smirked. Chocolate smudged on his teeth. "Dad gave it to me. He says I'm the future of the bloodline. You're just the vessel." He kicked me in the shin, the same spot I hurt when we first came down, and walked away. I cried myself to sleep, not because of the pain, but because I realized that even at the end of the world, I wasn't important enough for a candy bar. And because Dad had been lying, he could leave whenever he wanted. The air wasn't poison. The Snickers proved it. Tell me, would this break you, or would it make you angry enough to start asking questions? Because for me, it was the first spark of rage. Fast forward to last week. the year 12 mark. Supplies were critical. The generator was coughing black smoke into the ventilation, making us all lightheaded. Mom hadn't spoken a coherent sentence in months. She'd just rocked back and forth, humming lullabies. Dad called an emergency meeting. He looked older now, his hair gray, but he still wore that damn Rolex, even though it had stopped ticking years ago. The sensors are picking up a drop in surface radiation. He lied. I could tell he was lying because his left eye twitched, a tell I'd learned over a decade of watching his face. But the skin melters are still a threat. We need to send a scout to test the air quality and scavenge for supplies. My heart stopped. I looked at Leo. He was 22 now, broad-shouldered from doing push-ups all day, strong. He was the protector, right? Dad's eyes slid past Leo and landed on me. "Sarah," he said softly, "it has to be you." "Me?" My voice cracked. "But Leo is stronger. Leo knows how to use the crossbow." "Leo is the heir," Dad snapped, his mask slipping. "We cannot risk the male line. You are smaller, faster. If the creatures see you, well, you can run." Basically, I was expendable. The preparation took 3 days. Dad dressed me in a hazmat suit he'd fashioned out of garbage bags and duct tape. He gave me a Geiger counter, which I later realized was just a broken calculator taped to a radio, and a rusty knife. "You have 20 minutes, he told me, standing at the bottom of the ladder. "If you're out back, I'm sealing the blast doors. I won't risk the family for one straggler." He didn't hug me. Mom didn't look up. Leo gave me a thumbs up, looking bored. I started climbing. The ladder was cold and slick with 12 years of condensation. My muscles burned. Every rung felt like a step toward death. I was hyperventilating, terrified that as soon as I opened the hatch, my skin would bubble and melt off. I reached the wheel. I pushed. It wouldn't budge. Panic set in. Maybe he locked it from the outside? Maybe there is no outside. I slammed my shoulder against the steel. Clang again. Clang! With a groan of rusted metal, the wheel turned. Light, blinding, white, painful light poured in. I squeezed my eyes shut, waiting for the burning sensation. But there was no heat, just a breeze, a cool, fresh breeze that smelled like pine needles. And gasoline? I smuttled through the bushes, tearing my suit, until I reached the pavement. A woman walking a golden retriever stopped and stared at me. I must have looked insane. A girl in trash bags holding a rusty knife, pale as a ghost. "Are you okay, sweetie?" she asked. I stared at her dog. It wasn't a mutant. It wagged its tail. "What year is it?" I croaked. My voice sounded foreign in the open air. The woman frowned, clutching her leash tighter. "It's 2024, honey. Do you need me to call someone?" 12 years. I looked back at the hidden hatch in the ground. My father wasn't protecting us from the apocalypse. He was hiding us from the world. And then I saw it. On a billboard across the highway, a faded, peeling poster. It was a wanted poster. It had a face on it. A man's face. My father's face. I stood there, freezing, on the side of the road, realizing that the monster wasn't the radiation outside. The monster was the man I'd just left down that ladder. And he had my mother. And he had my brother. Tell me, would you run for your life and never look back? Or would you try to save the family that treated you like a sacrifice? The first time I tasted a Coca-Cola, I thought I was drinking acid. It fizzed on my tongue, burned my throat, and I literally screamed in the middle of the police station, thinking the demons had poisoned me. I threw the can across the room. It hit the wall and exploded. Brown liquid everywhere. 3 officers drew their weapons. I was on the floor in fetal position, screaming, "The acid! The acid!" It took them 20 minutes to calm me down, and another hour to explain that carbonation is not a chemical weapon. A heavy-set officer named Sergeant Miller just looked at me, sighed, and said, "It's just sugar, kid. Nobody's poisoning you." It's funny, my father told me the surface world was filled with monsters who would eat my flesh, but looking around that fluorescent-lit precinct, the only monster I could picture was the man who had convinced me that the sun was a death ray. Tell me, how long does it take to deprogram a cult member? Because even sitting there safe, I kept waiting for the roof to melt. The woman with the dog had called 911. When the patrol car arrived, I tried to stab the tire with my rusty knife because I thought the vehicle was a mech scout for the mutants. They cuffed me, not because I was a criminal, but because I was screaming about radiation levels and trying to bite them. Now I was in a small gray room. The air conditioning was freezing, cooler than the bunker ever was. There was a mirror on the wall. I caught a glimpse of myself. I looked like a feral animal. Pale, translucent skin, pupils dilated from the bright lights, wearing a suit made of hefty bags and duct tape. Sergeant Miller walked in. He didn't look like a demon. He looked tired. He had a coffee stain on his tie and smelled like Old Spice and stale donuts. "So," he said, sliding a folder across the metal table, "we ran your fingerprints. Do you know who you are?" "I'm Sarah," I whispered, shrinking back into the metal chair. "I am the vessel, daughter of the prophet." Miller rubbed his temples. "You're Sarah Jenkins. You've been listed as presumed dead since November 2012, along with your mother, Ellen, and your brother, Leo." He opened the folder. Inside weren't photos of nuclear craters. They were photos of my dad, but he wasn't wearing his survival fatigues. He was wearing a tuxedo, holding a glass of champagne, smiling that shark-like smile. "Your father isn't a prophet, Sarah," Miller said, his voice dropping an octave. "He's a fugitive, Arthur Jenkins, wanted for Ponzi scheme fraud totaling $45 million. And," he hesitated, "and for the questioning in the disappearance of his business partner, David Ross." "Disappearance?" I whispered. "What do you mean, disappearance?" Miller's face went dark. "David Ross vanished the same night your family did, November 14th, 2012. We never found a body." A body. I thought about the bunker, about the section Dad called the Forbidden Zone, the room he said was contaminated with radiation, the room we were never allowed to enter, the room that always smelled of chemicals, like bleach, like something rotting underneath the bleach. I started shaking. "I think I know where he is," I said. Miller pulled out a tablet, a thin sheet of glass that lit up. I flinched. He tapped the screen and showed me a video. It was a news clip from 2012. "Disgraced financier Arthur Jenkins remains at large tonight. Authorities believe he may have fled the country after liquidating his client's life savings. Neighbors say the family left in the middle of the night. There was no mushroom cloud, no fire, just my dad stealing money and kidnapping us to avoid prison." I threw up right there on the floor, but it wasn't just nausea. It was 12 years of lies exiting my body. Every "I love you" he said while locking the hatch. Every "I'm protecting you" while he starved us. Every time I thanked him for a can of expired beans, like he was God giving me communion. I wasn't just sick, I was being reborn, and birth is always violent. "Where is the bunker, Sarah?" Miller asked gently, handing me a paper towel. "We need to get your mom." "The trap door," I gasped, wiping my mouth. "Under the hay in the old McGregor barn, but you can't go in. He has defenses." Miller stood up and grabbed his radio. "Dispatch, we have a location. Send SWAT. Possible hostage situation. And tell forensics to bring ground-penetrating radar. We might have a body." They put me in the back of a cruiser so I could guide them. I felt like a traitor. A small, brainwashed part of me, the part that still loved my dad, screamed that I was killing my family. What if Miller is the liar? What if this is a simulation by the mutants? But then I saw the trees. Green, lush trees. I saw a bird flying. If the air was toxic, the bird would be dead. Logic was slowly winning the war against fear. We pulled up to the barn. It was surrounded by black SUVs, men in armor, and dogs. Real dogs, not mutants. "Stay here," Miller ordered. I watched through the window. It was surreal. The sanctuary was just a hole in the ground covered by rotting wood. They blew the hatch. A dull thud shook the ground. I expected gunfire. I expected Dad's crossbows. Instead, I heard screaming, but it wasn't Dad. It was Mom. 20 minutes later, Miller came back to the car. His face was gray. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. "You were right about the storage room," he said quietly. "We found David Ross. What was left of him. Your father kept him down there for 12 years. We don't know if he was alive for all of it." I threw up again. The man I called Dad didn't just steal money. He didn't just kidnap us. He had a prisoner, a real prisoner. While we were eating beans and praying to survive the radiation, there was a man dying 20 feet away from my bedroom, and I never knew. I never heard him scream. Or maybe I did, and Dad told me it was the skin melters. Paramedics wheeled a stretcher out. My mother looked like a skeleton wrapped in silk. She was blinking rapidly at the sun, letting out a high-pitched keen that sounded like a wounded animal. "Mom!" I screamed, banging on the window. Then 2 officers marched a man out. My father. He wasn't fighting. He was upright, dignified, wearing his prophet robes. When he saw the police, he didn't look scared. He looked annoyed, like he had been interrupted during a business meeting. He locked eyes with me through the cruiser window. He didn't look like a loving father. He looked at me with pure, cold hatred. He mouthed one word. I couldn't hear it, but I read his lips perfectly. Ungrateful. 12 years in a hole. 12 years of fear and hunger and lies. And his final message to me was that I should be grateful. That's when I knew. He wasn't sick. He wasn't delusional. He knew exactly what he was doing, and he thought he deserved a thank you. That's the thing about narcissists. They don't see victims. They see ungrateful audience members who didn't clap loud enough. I shivered. Miller opened the car door. He looked pale. "We got Arthur," he said, his voice tight, "and we're taking your mom to the hospital. She's severely malnourished and sedated, but she'll live." "And Leo?" I asked. "Where is my brother?" Miller frowned. He looked at his partner, then back at me. "Sarah, there was no one else in the bunker." "What?" My blood ran cold. "He was there. I saw him an hour ago. He gave me the thumbs up. We swept the whole place. It's 2,000 square feet, 2 bedrooms, a storage unit, the other room, and a generator room. Your father and mother were in the main room." There's no sign of a male in his 20s. "Check the ventilation," I screamed, grabbing Miller's uniform. "He must be hiding. He's the golden child. Dad would hide him first." Miller shook his head. "Sarah, listen to me. We found a tunnel in the back of the pantry. It was dug out recently. It leads to the creek about a mile north." I froze. The tunnel. Dad hadn't sent me out to scout because I was expendable. He sent me out as a distraction. He knew the food was gone. He knew it was over. He sent me up the main ladder to make noise, to draw attention, maybe to get caught by the demons so that the police would focus on the barn entrance. Meanwhile, Leo, his heir, his precious son, had crawled out the back tunnel with the last of the cash and the fake passports Dad had been hoarding. Dad stayed behind to stall. Mom was too weak to move, but Leo was gone. That night, I lay in a hospital bed with sheets so white they hurt my eyes. I had eaten a burger, which I threw up, and watched 3 hours of CNN just to prove to myself the world was still turning. A nurse came in to check my vitals. "You're a lucky girl, Sarah," she said kindly. "You're safe now. He's in jail." "Not all of them," I whispered. I turned on the TV. The news was already covering it. Billionaire fraudster found in underground bunker after 12 years. Body of missing business partner discovered. Then my phone, a burner the police gave me, buzzed. It was an unknown number. I shouldn't have answered. I really shouldn't have. "Hello?" There was silence on the other end. Then a sound I knew better than my own heartbeat. The sound of someone chewing a Snickers bar. "You ruined the plan, Sarah," Leo's voice said. He sounded calm, bored even. "Dad is going to be very disappointed in you. But don't worry. I'm out here now, and I've got the list." "What list?" I trembled. "The list of people who need to be punished for sins against the prophet. You're number 1, sis. Welcome to the real world." Click. I stared at the phone. My brother, who had been brainwashed to a sociopath and trained in survival tactics for 12 years, was loose in the modern world. He had money, he had weapons, and he believed I was the devil. The police think this is just a fraud case. They think the danger is over because the bad guy is in handcuffs. But I know the truth. The real monster wasn't the one giving the orders. It was the one who followed them without question. Tell me, if you were in my shoes, would you trust the police to protect you from a brother who knows how to hunt? Or would you run before he finds you? The police officer told me I was safe because my room was on the 4th floor and they had a guard posted at the elevator. I tried to tell him that my brother, Leo, could climb a 20-foot ventilation shaft in under 30 seconds without making a sound. The officer patted my shoulder and said, "Relax, honey, this isn't a movie." 2 hours later, I watched that same guard get dragged silently into a utility closet, and I realized that the real world was soft, and my brother was very, very hungry. Tell me, if you knew a trained killer was coming for you, would you wait for the cops to save you, or would you start sharpening a toothbrush? It was 2 a.m. The hospital was quiet, smelling of bleach and stale coffee. Sergeant Miller had left for the night, promising to track the burner phone in the morning. He didn't get it. To the police, Leo was a victim, a confused 20-year-old boy who had been isolated from society. To me, Leo was a soldier. I lay in the hospital bed staring at the ceiling tiles. I couldn't sleep. The bed was too soft, the air was too still. In the bunker, there was always the hum of the generator. Here, the silence felt heavy. I got up and pushed a chair under the door handle. It was a bunker rule. Always secure your perimeter. Then I went to the window. I looked down at the parking lot. A black SUV was idling near the entrance, not a police car. A civilian car. Then I saw the figure. He was wearing a paramedic's uniform. He walked with a specific gait, heavy on the toes, light on the heels. It was the silent walk Dad taught us for avoiding skin melters. It was Leo. He wasn't hiding. He was walking right through the front door. I slammed the emergency call button on my bed. "Nurse, there's a man downstairs. He's coming." The intercom crackled. "Miss Jenkins, please calm down. Visiting hours are over. No one can get in without a badge." A badge. Leo had the list. He had Dad's emergency cash. He probably bribed a paramedic or jumped a guard in the parking lot 5 minutes ago. I didn't wait. I ripped the IV out of my arm. Blood dripped onto the linoleum, but I didn't care. Pain was information. Pain meant I was alive. I grabbed the metal tray from my bedside table. It had a pitcher of ice water and a steak knife, a dull, rounded butter knife, really. I stood in the corner of the room, in the shadows, and waited. 3 minutes later, the doorknob turned. The chair scraped against the floor, jamming the door. The turning stopped. Silence. Then a soft click. He was picking the lock. He was using the tension wrench Dad taught us to use for scavenging supplies from abandoned stores. The door creaked open, pushing the chair aside like it was made of cardboard. Leo stepped in. He looked terrifyingly healthy. While I was malnourished and stunted, Leo was 6 feet 2. His skin was pale, but his muscles were thick. He wore a stolen EMT jacket that was too tight across his shoulders. In his hand, he didn't have a gun. He had a fire axe, the one from the glass case in the hallway. He scanned the empty bed. He saw the IV tube dangling. He smiled. It wasn't a crazy smile. It was a disappointed smile. "Sarah," he said softly, "you left your post. That's a strike." I stepped out of the shadows, holding the water pitcher. "Dad is a liar, Leo. There is no radiation. Look outside. There are people, there are cars. We lost 12 years for nothing." Leo didn't even look at the window. He looked at me with dead, shark-like eyes. "The prophet said the demons would use illusions. You've been corrupted by the surface air. You're hallucinating." "I'm not hallucinating," I screamed. "Mom is in the ICU because she's starved. And David Ross, Dad's partner, he was in the bunker the whole time, in the forbidden zone. Dad kept him prisoner for 12 years. Leo blinked. Just once. A flicker of something. Then it was gone. "The traitor deserved punishment," he said flatly. "The prophet explained it to me years ago. Ross betrayed the family. He was fuel for our survival. He knew. Leo knew about the prisoner. He knew and he never told me." "Mom was weak," Leo said, taking a step forward. He raised the axe. "The weak are fuel for the strong. That is the law. He swung. I didn't scream. I ducked. The axe buried itself in the drywall right where my head had been a second ago. Dust exploded everywhere. I threw the water pitcher of ice water in his face. It shocked him for a second. Cold was a sensation he wasn't used to in the heated bunker. I ran. I scrambled under his arm and bolted into the hallway. "Security!" I screamed. The hallway was empty. The guard at the elevator was gone. Just a smear of blood on the floor leading to the utility closet. I looked at the blood. It wasn't a lot. Leo didn't kill him. He just hurt him enough to keep him quiet. That was worse somehow. It meant Leo was thinking, planning. The Leo I knew would have killed without hesitation. This Leo was adapting to the surface world, learning its rules so he could break them more efficiently. I heard his heavy boots thudding behind me. He wasn't running. He was jogging. He knew he had stamina. He knew I was weak. I hit the stairwell door. Locked. Keycard required. I turned around. Leo was 20 feet away, dragging the axe against the wall. Sparks flew. Scrape, scrape, scrape. You can't run from the bloodline, Sarah. I promised Dad I'd clean up the mess. I looked around. I was trapped. Then I saw it, the laundry chute. A small stainless steel door near the floor, labeled soiled linen only. It was tiny, maybe 18 inches wide. Leo was too big. He had the golden child rations. He was massive. But me? I was the vessel. I was the runt. I had lived on beans and water. I dove. I scrambled headfirst into the chute just as the axe slammed into the wall above me. I slid down the metal tunnel, surrounded by the smell of dirty sheets and blood. It was dark. It was tight. It was exactly like the ventilation shafts in the bunker. I didn't panic. For the first time in my life, my trauma was my superpower. I knew how to move in the dark. I knew how to be small. I landed in a pile of laundry in the basement. I rolled out, gasping. For a second, I just lay there, surrounded by dirty sheets that smelled of strangers, normal people, people who had never heard of skin melters or radiation zones, people who threw their clothes in a chute without thinking about survival. I wanted to cry. I wanted to stay in that pile forever. But I heard the stairwell door slam open above me. Leo was coming. I ran to the employee lockers. I found one that was open. Inside was a pair of scrubs and a purse. I didn't hesitate. I stole them. I changed out of my hospital gown in 10 seconds. I grabbed the purse. Inside, car keys, a pack of gum, a wallet with $40. I ran out the back loading dock. The night air hit me. I found the car, a beat-up Honda Civic. I unlocked it. My hands were shaking so hard, I dropped the keys twice. As I started the engine, I looked up at the 4th floor. Leo was standing in the window. He was watching me. He held up a finger, one down. The hunt continues. I peeled out of the parking lot, driving into a city I didn't know, with no map, no allies, and $40 to my name. I realized something as I merged onto the highway, blending in with the traffic. Sergeant Miller couldn't help me. The law couldn't help me. Leo doesn't follow the laws of this world. He follows the laws of the bunker. And if I want to survive him, I have to stop acting like a victim in 2024 and start acting like the survivor I was in 2012. I'm not going to the police station next. I'm going to the one place Leo won't expect. I'm going back to the source. Tell me I'm not crazy. Would you keep running and hope the police catch him? Or would you turn around and hunt him down before he hurts anyone else? Most people run away from the scene of the crime. I drove a stolen Honda Civic straight back into it. The police tape was still fluttering in the wind around the old barn, but the squad cars were gone. They thought the threat was neutralized. They didn't know that the golden child had returned to the nest. I knew Leo was down there. A soldier always returns to base when the mission fails. Tell me, if you had to face your abuser in the dark, would you bring a weapon or would you bring the truth? Because I brought both. I parked the car in the woods and approached on foot. The silent walk, heel to toe. The hatch was broken, hanging off its hinges from the SWAT raid. The darkness below seemed to breathe. I climbed down the ladder. The smell hit me instantly. That mix of recycled air, ozone, and despair. For 12 years, this smell was my entire world. Now it smelled like a tomb. I didn't turn on the lights. I knew every inch of this concrete box. I knew that the third step squeaked. I knew that the hallway to the generator room was exactly 12 paces long. I heard him before I saw him. He was in the main room, sitting on Dad's throne, the recliner where he used to give his sermons. He had lit candles. He was trying to recreate the atmosphere, trying to pretend the sky didn't exist. "I knew you'd come back," Leo said. His voice echoed off the concrete walls. "The outside world is scary, isn't it, Sarah? Too much noise, too much light." He stood up. The axe was leaning against the chair. "Dad left instructions for this, you know," he continued, walking toward me. "Protocol Omega. If the sanctuary is breached, we cleanse the unworthy and wait for the extraction team." "There is no extraction team, Leo," I shouted, stepping into the candlelight. "There is no radiation. Dad is in a holding cell in the county jail. He's not a prophet. He's a thief and a murderer. David Ross, Leo. Dad kept him prisoner for 12 years. You knew. You knew and you helped." Leo laughed. It was a broken, jagged sound. "Ross was a traitor. The prophet explained everything. He lied," I screamed. I reached into the pocket of my stolen scrubs. I didn't have a gun. I had the manifesto. "Read this, Leo." I threw the crumpled paper at his feet. "I don't touch demon lies," he spat. "It's Dad's handwriting," I challenged him. "You know his handwriting. Read the entry for November 14th, 2012, the day we went under." Leo hesitated. The golden child in him couldn't resist an order from the father. He picked up the paper. He squinted in the candlelight. I watched his face. I watched the moment his world shattered. November 14th, 11:50 p.m. Success. The idiots actually bought it. Ellen is too drugged to care, and the kids are so terrified they'd believe the moon is made of cheese. Leo is a useful idiot. Strong, dumb, easily manipulated. I'll use him to keep the girl in line. Sarah is smarter. I'll have to watch her. If she ever figures it out, I'll feed her to Leo as a traitor. He'll do it. He'd kill his own sister if I told her she was a demon. That's the beauty of faith. It's better than prison. I am a god here. Useful idiot, I whispered. That's what you are to him, Leo. Not a soldier, not an heir, a guard dog. And he planned to make you kill me years ago. As a contingency, Leo dropped the axe. He made a sound I'll never forget, a whimper that sounded like a 5-year-old boy. "No," he choked out. He said I was the chosen one. He looked at the walls. He looked at the stash of canned beans. He looked at the airlock that was just a painted door. He looked at the forbidden zone, the room where David Ross had spent 12 years dying. The illusion broke, and when the illusion broke, the rage came. But not at me. He screamed, a primal animal scream, and grabbed the heavy oak table. He flipped it. He started smashing the radiation monitors. He tore the map of the scorched earth off the wall and shredded it. "He lied," Leo shrieked, smashing the TV screen with his bare fists. "He stole my life. He made me a murderer." He fell to his knees, sobbing. The Terminator was gone. My brother was back. I saw headlights flashing above the open hatch. I had texted Sergeant Miller the location from the stolen car before I came down. I knew I couldn't handle Leo alone. "Leo," I said softly, putting a hand on his shoulder. He flinched, but he didn't attack. "They're coming. Don't fight them, please." "I have nothing," he whispered, staring at his bleeding hands. "I don't know how to be out there." "I know," I said. "We'll learn." When the SWAT team descended, they didn't find a monster. They found 2 kids sitting on the floor of a bunker, holding hands, surrounded by the wreckage of a lie. The paramedics wrapped us in silver thermal blankets, the same kind they use for marathon runners. Or trauma victims. I guess we were both. Leo didn't fight. He didn't speak. He just held my hand until they separated us into different ambulances. The last thing he said to me that night was, "I'm sorry about the axe." I almost laughed. Almost. 6 months later, I sat in a courtroom and watched our father get sentenced to 180 years. The trial was the biggest media event of the year. Arthur Jenkins, I don't call him Dad anymore, was sentenced to 180 years for fraud, kidnapping, child endangerment, false imprisonment, and first-degree murder. They found David Ross's remains. They found his journal. He had been alive for the first 8 years. writing on the walls with his own blood, begging for help that never came. Arthur tried to stare me down in the courtroom. I stared back. He looked small, just a greedy old man in an orange jumpsuit who thought he was God. Mom is in a long-term care facility. She's regaining her memory, but she still hoards food under her pillow. She still checks the locks 7 times before bed. Some cages you carry with you forever. Leo is in a secure psychiatric ward. He's not allowed to leave yet. The doctors say his violent programming is still a risk. He has to learn how to exist without an enemy. I visit him every Sunday. We play cards. We don't talk about the bunker. Last week, he tried a Snickers bar again. He smiled and said, "It tastes better when you don't have to earn it." But then he said something else, quietly, almost to himself. "Do you ever miss it, Sarah?" The bunker. I didn't answer, because the truth is, sometimes I do. Sometimes the world is too loud and too bright, and I want to crawl back into the dark where everything made sense, where I knew the rules, where I knew who the enemy was. Out here, the enemies look like friends. Out here, the monsters wear suits and smile for cameras. Out here, I have to decide every single day who to trust. In the bunker, Dad decided for me. It was horrible, but it was simple. I think that's the part they don't tell you about escaping a cult. You get out, you survive, you win, but part of you, a small, sick part, misses the cage, because freedom is terrifying. Leo saw it in my face. He nodded. He understood. We're both free now, but we're both learning what that means. Last Sunday, I visited Leo. He was drawing something. When I asked what it was, he showed me. It was a house, with a yard, with a dog, with 2 stick figures holding hands. "Us," he said. "Someday, when I get out." I cried in the car for 20 minutes after I left. Tell me, is that hope or is that delusion? And does it matter if it keeps him alive? And me? I have a small apartment. I have a job at a library. I love the quiet. I have a real boyfriend who knows everything and doesn't treat me like glass. Every time I eat a fresh apple, or feel the rain on my face, or just walk down the street without permission, I feel a rush of victory. But some victories come with shadows. Yesterday, I got a letter. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting. Perfect. Precise. The handwriting of a man who used to grade my survival reports with a red pen. It said, "The extraction team is still active. Protocol Omega was never canceled. You think you escaped, Sarah? But the sanctuary has many rooms, and not all of them are underground. P.S. I like what you've done with the apartment. The yellow curtains are a nice touch. See you soon. The Prophet." I looked at my window. At my yellow curtains, the ones I bought at Target 2 weeks ago, the ones I was so proud of because they were the first thing I ever chose for myself. Someone had been watching. Someone knew. I ripped the curtains down that night. I haven't replaced them. Now I just stare at the dark window and wonder if someone is staring back. I showed the letter to the police. They said it was impossible. Arthur is in Supermax, no contact with the outside world. But here's the thing. Dad always had a backup plan. Dad always had people on the outside, people who believed, people he recruited before we went under, people who think he really is a prophet. I locked my door last night. I pushed a chair under the handle, checked the windows twice. Old habits die hard, or maybe they don't die at all. Maybe they just wheat. The state prosecutors asked me if I wanted to press charges against Leo for the attempted attack in the hospital. Technically, he tried to kill me with an axe. I told them no. I told him he was a weapon, not the shooter. The shooter is in prison, but my friends tell me I'm crazy. They say he's dangerous, that once a golden child, always a narcissist, and that I'm risking my life by keeping him in it. So I have to ask you one last thing, and I really need an honest answer. Do you think a person can be unbrainwashed after 12 years of conditioning? Or am I making a mistake by trying to save the brother who once tried to sacrifice me? And one more thing, tell me, do you think the nightmare is really over? Or did I just escape one bunker to find myself in a bigger one? I don't know the answer, but I keep that letter in my nightstand. next to the knife I sleep with every night, because the prophet taught me one thing that turned out to be true. Always be ready. The enemy is always watching. I just never thought the enemy would be my own father, and I never thought his reach would extend beyond prison walls. But here I am, free, scared, alive, and waiting. The bunker taught me how to wait, how to listen for footsteps in the dark, how to sleep with one eye open. I used to think that was a curse. Now I'm starting to think it might be the only thing that keeps me alive. Thanks, Dad.